Live from Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, the midday news brief from Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. Military exercises are continuing in Brazil's Amazon region with the support of the United States. The operation known as Amazon Log 2017 was defined as humanitarian, but groups in Brazil and internationally have questioned that. Military forces from Peru, Colombia, the US and Brazil make up Amazon Log 2017, and the supposed objective is to train troops to face possible humanitarian crises caused by natural disasters or the increasing number of refugees. Some have claimed the true objective is a show of force towards Venezuela, but Brazil's army commanders insist it has nothing to do with the situation in Venezuela.
The United States has been working in cooperation with Colombia for many years. There is no justification in using Amazon Log to get closer to Venezuela. Colombia has been closer to that country for years now.
We are in the Amazon only because the Brazilian army invited us here. If they would have invited us to the south of the country, to Porto Alegre or any other place, we would have been there too.
Our correspondent, Adriana Rebreño, has the details.
I am here in Tabatinga, Brazil, where the Amazon Log 2017 military exercises are continuing. One of the main actions of the operation in the last 2 days has been the installation of a field hospital, and also members of the team have been carrying out some tasks in the local military hospital, which serves the population of this border area between Brazil, Colombia and Peru. I must say, this area is very inaccessible. The only way in is by plane or by ship. Also, there are almost no communications in the area. There is no access to internet or phones. This is a city that still needs a lot of help to continue to develop. On the other hand, the most controversial fact about this operation has been the participation of the US. In a recent press conference, the Army General Guilherme Teófilo said there was a conspiracy theory around this subject because, according to him, the US officials are here just to help, since they have a lot of experience in delivering aid during disaster situations. There are 30 members of the Southern Command, the National Guard and the Forestry Guard of the US, who are here providing logistical help. There is also a US Hercules 130 plane. We previously received information about them bringing a kitchen and a water purification plant, but this never happened in the end. The Brazilian Army Logistical Command is the organizer of the whole event, and they have remarked several times that the focus of the operation is on humanitarian aid. They keep saying that theories about the operation being related to the Venezuelan border are paranoia and unfounded. They also said this kind of military exercise could be repeated in different parts of Brazil and Latin America. We will continue to bring you details of this operation that will continue until November 13. Now back to you in the studio, Eugenie.
Adriana Rebreño. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos and several companies turned out to be implicated in the Paradise Papers scandal, which details the ways in which they have evaded taxes in the South American nation. More details in the next report.
A country where the impossible becomes possible, a group of congressmen has presented a demand for the Constitutional Court to revoke a tax imposed by the government of President Juan Manuel Santos on some items of personal use. This, as they accuse the president of evading taxes himself through the use of tax havens.
Mientras se graba a las mujeres de Colombia, la gente
While ordinary Colombian women suffer, there are over $50 billion hidden in tax havens. This is based on corruption and fraud, money that the most wealthy do not pay, while the middle classes are hit with discriminatory and cruel taxes like this one.
President Santos is one of the 127 international leaders to be implicated in the use of tax havens, according to the 13 million documents revealed in the Paradise Papers.
It is a mechanism that works to evade taxes. This is used by companies in order not to pay taxes in the places that they are supposed to pay taxes, to the state, on the business activities that they carry out.
Along with the president, other Colombian names were also revealed, like the son of former President Cesar Gaviria, Simón Gaviria, and two former defense ministers in the Uribe government, Juan Carlos Esguerra and Gabriel Silva Luján. In a statement, President Juan Manuel Santos addressed the subject. As an advisor of that board, they offered me an option to get a minor participation, to which I rejected in the year of 2000. I never invested one single peso or was a partner of that company.
Just by accepting a place on the board, he's accepting these tax dodges, these kinds of tax evasion that in the end means less money for the Colombian public purse. And it's a total contradiction to that he, as president, had applied 3 tax evasions for us Colombians, while he not only knows about, but practices tax evasion himself.
Not only politicians and celebrities are involved in this case, but also companies like Ecopetrol, the Medellin Public Services Company, EPM, and the Bogota Power Company.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Campesinos in Guatemala have begun an indefinite protest outside the Constitutional Court to demand the permanent closure of a mine on their land. The Canadian-owned mine has been temporarily closed by a court order. Our team in Guatemala has the details.
Villagers from the San Rafael Las Flores, in the south of the Santa Rosa state, have brought their resistance to this mining project to the capital. The mine was opened 5 years ago, and the Constitutional Court is about to decide whether it should be closed permanently or not. The community accuses it of damaging the natural resources in the area.
The water can't be drank. The upper part of San Rafael de las Flores has been made uninhabitable. The village practically disappeared, and it is the mining that is responsible for this.
The members of the community who are resisting the mining project say that the machines used to extract gold and silver have already created a series of earth tremors.
My house was cracked and several other houses were cracked too because these tremors. They were like car crashes, and as you can see, they stopped when the mining stopped.
The Canadian-owned San Rafael mine is currently suspended by a court order because the authorities hadn't asked the Xinca peoples in the area if they approved of its installation. The protesters say that their own consultation on the mine was also ignored.
We organized a popular vote, and that's what really hurts me, cuts me to the core. The fact that in this referendum we won with 98.98% against the mine, but the authorities didn't respect that we have those rights, the rights of the people.
The Constitutional Court has the last word on whether the operation of the San Rafael mine will continue or not. The protesters insist that they will remain outside of the court for as long as it takes until they hear the final verdict from the tribunal, which could happen in several weeks.
And our reporter Mario Rosales has more from outside the court in Guatemala City.
Un saludo hasta Estudios Centrales. Bueno, nos encontramos acá.
We are outside the Constitutional Court here in Guatemala's capital, where an indigenous and farmers' march has come all the way from the north of the country. They're demanding that hydroelectric companies cease operations in their territories. They're asking court officials to revoke those licenses. They're also combining with protests from other indigenous and farmer groups that right now are gathering in at least 11 roads to demand that President Jimmy Morales resign, as the public ministry suggests he may have committed illicit acts. They're asking that Morales step down from the presidency and also that hydroelectric companies no longer operate in the region because they're taking up all the water from their rivers.
And in Honduras, thousands took to the streets demanding that the current president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, be banned from standing for re-election, arguing that it is a constitutional violation. They also asked for transparency in the upcoming elections on November 26th.
They arrived from different places from all around the country, and they were led by the social organization Convergencia Ciudadana and the Opposition Alliance.
I came here because I have dignity, and I want people in this country to have better opportunities.
Look at what the government has given us. 950 extractive companies, destroying all of our lands, rivers, and forests. That's why Orlando has to leave.
The protesters marched to the electoral court where legal appeals have been presented against the re-election.
We've decided to march because of what the Honduran people are currently suffering. We found out that we needed to express ourselves, but we are also marching to take legal actions before court.
The destabilizing element is Juan Orlando Hernandez and bureaucracy, because the people of Honduras are showing their concerns through peaceful protest, but it's also their right to protest.
The electoral court system and its lack of credibility has already been denounced by different sectors.
At the moment we have absolute confidence with the results. Everything after the elections will be better. So this is affirmation that we're going to be able to count the ballots ourselves.
The presidential candidate for the Alliance Party, Salvador Nasralla, said that he won't accept the electoral results if the court doesn't use an alternate counting method.
First of all, I don't agree with, under no circumstances, the voting or counting system. I can't accept it. In 2013, we found out via a probe that the system was totally corrupt.
Members of the Alliance Party said that they're working to register thousands of people in order to be able to verify the results on election day. Leaders of Opposition Alliance made clear to the court authorities that they will install a computer center and also that until they have their own count of votes, only then will they accept an eventual victory or defeat.
Corruption charges against Ecuadorian Vice President Jorge Glass have been presented by the Attorney General for alleged ties to the Odebrecht bribery scheme. Carlos Baca will now ask Judge Manuel Jurado to take Glass to trial as part of his alleged involvement in a corruption scheme with the Brazilian construction company. The ruling has also been brought against Glass's uncle, Ricardo Rivera, and 11 other suspects. My colleague Carla Gonzalez has been following these developments and joins us now. So Carla, just explain to us where the case with Glass is right now.
So today, the Attorney General of Ecuador presented charges against Glass, but he also said that he wouldn't press charges against 5 citizens, 4 of them from Brazil, and one of them, the main informer against Glass, who headed Odebrecht here in Ecuador, and who said that he had paid, the company had paid $33 million to government officials to obtain these contracts. The lawyer of Jorge Glass said that he will present in return a suit against the Attorney General, Carlos Baca, to seek his arrest, because he says that these people that have already been confessed corrupt people in Brazil, in Odebrecht, were not seeking to put them behind bars, but instead he's seeking to destroy Vice President Jorge Glass without having any evidence.
How does this fit into the current dispute within the ruling País Alliance?
Of course, this case will continue to divide Alianza País inside their party lines, especially people that support Lenín Moreno and those who support former President Rafael Correa because of the internal divisions and fights that they have for the past months. Of course, there will also be a division inside the National Assembly if the opposition continues to seek a political trial against Glass to remove him from his position as vice president and to actually have him sentenced for corruption. Glass has been in a pretrial detention since October the 2nd, and right now in Ecuador, the position of vice president is held by an acting vice president that was appointed by Lenín Moreno. And of course, Glass continues to say that he's innocent, so we will continue to see an even stronger division in Ecuador on this matter.
Thank you so much for that update. That's my colleague, Carla Gonzalez, with that update. Nurses from Peru's health ministry have started an indefinite strike demanding higher wages and more investment in infrastructure. Our correspondent Jaime Herrera has the details.
Here in Peru, a new day of protest is taking place. Nurses from Peru's Ministry of Healthcare are carrying out a 24-hour strike. They're demanding that the Kuczynski government fulfill its promises to the sector of workers, mainly a budget increase for the sector. This would obviously include a wage increase, better job conditions, and also hiring more personnel, because right now there are not enough nurses. We must say that this is not the only strike in the country. The education sector is continuing its 30-day strike, and they will be gathering in front of the Congress. So we repeat, today there are several protests against Kuczynski's government, and there have already been a series of strikes since he came to power last year. That's because the unions say they're not seeing any response to their demands, nor any commitment from Kuczynski to keep his promises. That's the information we have here today in Peru. Now back to you, Soini.
Jaime Herrera in Peru. In the state of Michoacán, Mexico, at least 10 teachers from the National Coordination of Education Workers, the CNTE, were violently detained by police forces after they had been protesting against non-payment. For 2 hours, the teachers blocked the streets in the city of Morelia. The rally ended up with a confrontation between the police who attacked the protesters with tear gas, alleging that they did so for security reasons. And we'll be back very soon, so stay with us. A pro-independence strike is taking place in Catalonia in protest against the jailing of Catalan leaders. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered in the Sant Jaume Square to demand the release of 8 ministers from the deposed Catalan government, as well as other activists. The protesters shut down roads and public transport was running at a minimal service. Many shops are also closed.
We are striking for democracy in a government because ours has been kidnapped. Our government is in exile and in prison.
Our correspondent Joan Ortiz has the details from Barcelona.
The gathering was announced at 12:30. Just look at this. Plaza San Jaume is full. And as we have said before, this is not the only place where people are gathering, but at all the squares in the Catalan region. A successful gathering overall. However, today's planned strike and shutdown hasn't seen such a large turnout, and people are calling this Operation Borders. Besides the gathering, the Defense Committee of the Republic, which is made up of decentralized groups, are blocking the roads that connect Catalonia with the rest of Spain and France. They are blocking Catalonia's inbound and outbound roads. This is how the Defense Committee has decided to act. We've also seen protests with tractors, which were blocking several train tracks in the Catalan region. Some protests aren't seeing as much success as this one, but the protests blocking the roads and trains are being effective. Most importantly, today the Ministry of the Interior said that on December 21st, the day of elections, classes in schools will be cancelled, so the facilities can be used as polling stations. By the way, people are getting louder when the police helicopters patrol the protest areas. Finally, here in this plaza, we have heard from many authorities that Catalonia is in prison and it can go back to normal.
John Ortiz in Barcelona. And now here's some of the other news stories making headlines around the world.
British Aid Minister Priti Patel is in hot water with Prime Minister Theresa May over her unauthorized meeting with Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in August. Patel had to cut her trip to Uganda short after being summoned back to London by May over the meetings. The United Nations World Food Programme says the Rohingya community who have fled from Myanmar to Bangladesh risk suffering a serious malnutrition crisis. According to a WFP emergency coordinator, many families were already showing signs of malnutrition before arriving in Bangladesh.
We knew already before they left Myanmar that the nutrition status of the population was poor. Unfortunately, it has further deteriorated and continues to deteriorate. We're seeing that impacts of poor water and sanitation, high incidence of illnesses, are forcing these malnutrition rates to levels that we really do not want to see. We're going to have to invest very heavily, both as WFP and as the collective of humanitarian responders, to try and overcome this very concerning situation.
Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf says that her country's democracy is under assault. This after the Supreme Court of Liberia ordered the suspension of the presidential runoff planned for Tuesday. A complaint was lodged by the opposition Liberty Party candidate Charles Brumskin, who claims there were irregularities and fraud during the first round. Sirleaf says that politicians need to do better.
At this moment, our democracy is under assault. Our country's reputation is under assault. Our economy is under stress. We politicians must do better.
India's federal government has called for immediate action to reduce dangerous levels of pollution. Citywide school closures, limits on traffic and construction have been implemented as part of emergency measures after particulate emission hit 500 in some places. The Environment Minister tweeted that authorities should be prepared to deploy helicopters to spray water over the capital and impose a ban on burning on farms.
U.S. President Donald Trump is in China, the third stop on his 5-nation tour of Asia. He has been to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. Our correspondent Isidora Diaz has more.
The United States President Donald Trump is in China on his first visit to the nation, where he will meet with Xi Jinping as part of his Southeast Asian tour. The most important meetings will take place during the Business Forum and at the Great Hall of the People, where they will sign a number of bilateral agreements. Donald Trump is visiting China as part of his Asian tour that also took him to Japan and South Korea. China and the US are looking to move closer, particularly after Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Florida last April. The US President has two main priorities in his visit to the Asian giant. First, to put a stop to the North Korean nuclear program, which he underlined during his recent visits prior to China. While in Beijing, Trump will hope to encourage the Chinese government to increase pressure on Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear program. Another of Trump's objectives during this visit is to touch base on their commercial and economic relationship, where they have differing approaches. The US supports protectionism and China is pro-economic globalization, although both presidents have said that they are optimistic that this visit will strengthen their bond, particularly in the commercial sector.
Isidora Diaz in Beijing. It's also 1 year since Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. So what is the balance sheet? Let's go to Washington and our correspondent Jorge Gestoso. Good afternoon, Jorge. So what exactly has changed during the Trump presidency and what hasn't changed?
So really, what is the most important of the election that took place yesterday in many parts of the country exactly 1 year from his election, is the resounding slap on his face that he received in terms of his policies. Why? Because most of what he is preaching, we're talking about anti-immigration, we're talking about tax cuts for the rich, we're talking trying to replace Obamacare, and we're talking about gun control, mostly has been resoundingly voted against by the electorate. For example, two very important governorships that we're talking about, Virginia and New Jersey, has been won by Democrats. So Democrats has a very, very important victory night last night. And another thing that was very important is the enormous victory of diversity throughout the election night that we witnessed yesterday. Why? Because we've seen for the first time a transgender being elected to the state legislature here around Washington in Virginia. Also, we have seen a gay mayor in Seattle. We have seen also the first African-American mayor in South Carolina, and many, many, many women being participating at a much higher rate than before. So for the Republican Party, a quick and a very important question mark. Should they continue to embrace the policies of Donald Trump that are putting them in a very, very bad political situation and losing very quickly their political agenda, or to separate and try to win elections? We're talking about midterms elections in next year in 2018, but also the presidential election in 2020. What we're talking about here is 1 year today after Donald Trump has been elected, he has reached the lowest level of approval according to many, many polls, which means that it's a fantastic opportunity for Democrats to win some terrain, and also a big question mark or a big concern for the establishment of the political Republican Party, because doesn't know if they should continue to bet on Donald Trump or it's time to start to distance themselves and try another route.
Thank you so much for that update. That's our Washington correspondent, Jorge Gestoso. And we've come to the end of this midday news brief. So for these and many other stories, you can always go to our website, tellusyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you so much for watching.